Beautiful day, because all I saw was dark. When I asked David, I texted David last night, and by the way, he's doing really well. He's still got pain in his eye, but he's doing okay. I said, is this thing at 7 or 7:30? And he said 7, and you can thank Josh for that. It's not my fault. There's something up here being recorded, so that's okay. I think I need to get rid of it, don't I? I will, see if I figure out how to do that, but there we go. Maybe there, no, there. Okay, so it's back. Why is it back up there? And I got rid of it. Okay, there it is. All right, so we're moving through Luke, right? How's the reading going? Yeah, we doing it? Luke 1? Oh, lukewarm. Nice, nice. I like it. Yeah, you need to talk to Phil. Y'all can compare notes. Do I need to put this thing on? Okay. Fine. What's that? Take it off mute. That's always helpful. Okay, so, oh yeah, much better. All right, so we're talking about Luke 9 today. And as Phil says, a transfiguration, is that how you say it? Transfiguration, the transfiguration of Jesus. Most of you know the story, right? Transfiguration, it's in the 3 synoptic gospels. Jesus goes up to the mountaintop. Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about that today. So the first thing I want to do is just kind of set the scene of where we are. We're in chapter 9. Jesus has sent his 12 disciples out to do healing and to preach or tell people about him. And then they've come back to tell Jesus what they've done. Then we hear that Herod has gotten wind of Jesus, this guy who's out there healing people and telling them that he is, he's been sent from God. And then we have the feeding of the 5,000. Okay, this is not the feeding with the little boy, but it's the other one, okay? The feeding of the 5,000. And then we have Jesus asking his disciples, who do the people think I am? Who do they say I am? And some of the disciples tell him that people think he's John the Baptist, or people think that he's Elijah, the prophet of old. But then he asked Peter specifically, who do you say I am? And this is the point where Peter says, you are the Messiah. All right. So then he tells his disciples, don't tell anyone that. He says it again, right? And then he tells them, he explains that he's going to suffer, that he's going to die, and that then he's going to be raised up on the 3rd day. And then if anyone wants to be his followers, they have to deny themselves, pick up their cross, and follow him. Remember all that story? That's kind of the background of where we are today. So where we are today, do I change the slides or do you change them? You got them. All right, so this is the passage that we're looking at today. Yeah, thanks. If you can move that out of the way. Now, about 8 days after these sayings, Jesus took with them Peter and John and James and went up on the mountain to pray. And while praying, the appearance of his face changed and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw 2 men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure. Probably I should go to my own here. Be helpful. Speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the 2 men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah, not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him. When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent. And in those days told no one any of the things they had seen. All right. what happens next after this is they go down from the mountain, and Jesus heals a man's son who has begged him to heal him. Next thing I want to show you real quick, we're going to get back to this passage in just a minute. Would you flip to that first? Okay, I just thought I'd pull a couple. There's a lot of art out there depicting the Transfiguration. So this first one comes from Raphael. It's in the Vatican Museum, and it kind of combines the Transfiguration scene, which you see on top, and down below you see a scene from Matthew where a father brings his epileptic son to Jesus to be healed. And then you'll notice that Christ is floating here. Actually, the three of them are floating, which kind of calls to mind Jesus' ascension and also the resurrection. So I thought that was interesting. Can you flip to the next one? This one is found, of course, above. So this one is in the Basilica of St. Apollinaire in Ravenna. And so in this one, you have Moses and Elijah on either side of the cross. They're kind of hard to see there. The standing figure is Saint Apollinaire, who was a disciple of Peter. And then those 12 lambs are the 12 disciples. And then there's 3 sheep up above, or lambs up above. And those are the 3 apostles who would have witnessed the Transfiguration. But there's no Jesus in this one, which I thought was interesting. There's a hand. I don't know if you can see it, but it's right above the cross. You see it up there? Yeah. Hand of God. All right.
Is there ever an explanation of why Jesus is in it?
No, I couldn't find one. I was looking for it. Why is he not there? I don't know.
Or why that saint made himself so prominent.
I know, right? That might have something to do with it, because it is in the Basilica that it kind of honors him. All right, next, one more. I got one more of these. Okay, so this one is in St. Catherine's Monastery in Sinai. And this one is kind of the earliest version of this type of thing. This one shows Christ in the middle, of course, and then you've got Moses on his left and Elijah on his right. And then below them are Peter, James, and John. And this one is pretty stark, right? Nothing, I think up above, and probably there's pictures all the way around. And I don't have any explanation of who those are, but I'm going to guess those are apostles, perhaps. I thought that was interesting. All right. I'm going to go back to the passage here, the one we just read. I want you to listen to it again, all right? You don't necessarily need to read along. You're welcome to if you want, but I want you to just listen. And I want you, after we're done listening, I want you to tell me what pops out at you. Is there a word? Is there a phrase? Is there something you never noticed before? All right, so just listen. Now, about 8 days after these sayings, Jesus took with him Peter and John and James and went up to the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw 2 men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep. But since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the 2 men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent, and in those days told no one any of the things they had seen. What did you notice about this time that you perhaps hadn't noticed before? Anything?
One word that stood out to me was accomplish. When they say accomplishing is that resurrection.
Okay.
And I guess it's personally, I feel like, I don't necessarily accomplish anything or everything that I'm told is we don't accomplish anything, but God works through us.
Okay.
But I think, in this situation, it actually works because He is God. He is accomplishing that.
Okay.
It's not like, I don't think it's wrong for that to, I guess, give Him the credit for work that He accomplishes. Saving all of us.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
It stood out. It was the same word stood out for me.
Is it really?
But accomplish as opposed to which he was about to maybe endure.
Okay.
It's the way it's phrased. Almost, it's now they're looking at it as like a goal.
Right. Is it perhaps something that had been foretold that's going to be accomplished? Perhaps. Yeah. What else? Anything else? Anything? Yeah.
Departure. You may be addressing that, but departure is the word that only appears in Luke. So I was doing some reading about it all like that last night. So Timothy Johnson points that out
In his book. Yeah. Any go ahead.
Interesting that, maybe the climb up the mountain was tedious, but, they're in a pretty dazzling, happening yet they're way down to sleep.
Yeah, interesting. Isn't that interesting? So in the other two accounts of this, they don't say that. It's only in Luke that they talk about being weighed down with sleep. Yeah.
I think God is mad. Why would He bring a black cloud over?
Oh, where do you remember hearing about the cloud? Anybody? Yes. Remember when Moses and the cloud, the people remember when the cloud appears, that must be God, right? Yeah. So listen to him. Yeah. Right. Don't make me come down there again. Yeah. Right. There's Brandon. What else? What else did you notice? Either for the first time or that jumped out at you or that you notice is different than the way you've read it before? Is there anything?
Well, I a question. Why would Moses and Elijah versus Father, Holy Spirit?
Excellent question. Why don't you bring the whole family? Okay. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Not Phil. Phil doesn't get to answer this one. Anybody have thoughts? Why would it be Moses, number one? What did Moses do?
Well, he's the Messiah, and Moses took the people to the promised land.
He took the people from the promised land.
Elijah was the one that, he was probably the most significant prophet.
Okay.
And so, you're up there with, nobody gets to see God. So you're up there with the two people that appear here on earth, probably big hitters.
Yeah, so, right.
So now that puts him at their level.
Oh, okay.
And he's now at that pinnacle.
Okay.
I mean, as you said in the prior scripture.
Yep.
Peter, who do you say I am?
Mm-hmm.
You're the Messiah.
Right.
Well, you're part of the big three at this point.
Yeah.
The power conference.
Yeah.
Okay. With Moses and Elijah.
Okay.
You made it. Okay.
All right. Yeah, good point. So Elijah's the prophet, right? Moses represents the law, right? He brought the law down off the mountain, the commandments off the mountain, right? So we have representation of the law and the prophets there. My question, I don't know if y'all had a chance to read it, was how did they know that was Elijah and Moses? Because they'd never seen them before.
They wore the church name tag.
Oh, they did. Oh, that's how. Okay, all right. That was just something that I thought about. Like, how did they know that's who that was? I don't know. It's a mystery. Just like a lot of this stuff is a mystery, right? But yeah, you're absolutely right. Law, Moses represents the law, Elijah represents the prophets, and now they've got Jesus up there, the big three, right? So what does that tell the disciples? Exactly what you said.
You're the man.
You're the man, right? You are on par with these great men of the Jewish faith. What else?
It's interesting to say not knowing what he said.
Yeah.
They, said it's good to be here. Let's make 3 dwellings.
Right. What does that mean? Not knowing what he said. Yeah. Anybody have thoughts on that one? That's a good one. It's a good question. Why would they say that?
Just another case of Peter being Peter.
Okay. Just getting excited,
Yeah,
right?
just
And
excited.
all right, what can we do? What can we do here? We don't want to, we want to stay here. This is an awesome experience, right? Let's build some houses and let's just keep everybody up here. Forget the rest of those guys. Maybe.
Plus maybe another thing, it's something we can do.
Uh-huh.
It's in, let's take charge.
It's like when somebody we know is, and it's not the same analogy, but it reminds me of times when people we know are going through something and we feel like there's something we have to do. All right, what can we do? And so why do we do it? Sometimes we do it because we really truly want to help them, right? Sometimes we do it because it makes us feel better. So along the same lines, he didn't know what else to do. What else do you say? And Peter has to say something. All interesting thoughts, right? Do we have anybody online, Andy? Okay, any of them have anything they want to say? Probably not. You have to be in the room to talk. Oh, that's a rule.
So,
That's
hey,
a-
guys online, do you have anything if you want to add? If you got questions for Kathy, just go ahead. She can hear you.
They're in the cloud. Okay.
Yes. Y'all are in the cloud, but we can hear you in the room. I hope you can hear in the room.
There's something in the chat down there. I don't know what that is. Let's see. We're good, Armand says. Okay, fine. Oh, there's something else in the chat. Comments from the table so people from Zoom can hear. Can you repeat the comments? Oh, I'm sorry.
Kathy, that's my comment to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry I didn't see it before. Holler at me back there next time. What else, friend? What else? Elijah was to announce the coming of the Messiah. Okay. All right. What else? Anything else? Any word? We have accomplished, we have departure. Anything else that jumped out at you as you read it or heard it read to you? Anybody ever done this before, the Lectio Divina, where you read it 3 times or you have it read to you 3 times and it's what jumps out at you? What's different that you never noticed before? Anybody ever done that form of prayer? Yeah, it can be really helpful.
They kept silent and told no one.
What's that?
They kept silent and told no one.
They kept silent and told no one. Yeah, why is that? In the other 2 Gospels, Jesus tells them not to say anything. But in this one, Jesus doesn't say that, but they do it anyway, right? Or we're not told that Jesus says it. Wonder why.
So are we believing they didn't come down until the rest of the 12? They just kept it between the 3 of them?
That's what this would say. That's what this gospel would say. What's that? You don't believe it? There's no way Peter could keep his mouth shut. Yay, Peter. Yeah. Got to spread the good news. Man, y'all wouldn't believe what I saw, right? So how do you think, Phil and I were talking yesterday. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you describe that and not sound like it? Like, we're up there, all of a sudden, Jesus' face changes.
Yep.
One.
Yep.
And then 2 other people show up. There's all this pride like, God talks. Everyone's gonna go, what?
That's right. I mean, what are you talking about? Have you lost it totally? Were you going to say something back there, Nathan?
The same.
Same thing?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's about how the Transfiguration, space change.
Uh-huh.
And he went from human to spirit, from man to God.
Okay.
So pretty significant that. Yeah, I would think.
You would think, right? So what do you think the rest of the guys, Phil and I were talking yesterday, what do you think the rest of the guys thought about not getting to go? I mean, what do you think? The other disciples that are sitting down below. What would you have thought? Man, if
Yeah, but these three are always, there is inner circle. I mean, I think, I go back to, you look at, everything goes back to politics. And I think about somebody that's in power surrounds himself with 2 or 3 people that when all else fails,
he can trust.
them.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think the other 9 disciples, I mean, it's like James and John want to know which can be in the left, which in the right of the kingdom, right? So you have to know the other disciples. I feel like these 3 were the ones that with the inner circle.
Okay.
I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah.
It appears that way throughout the New Testament. You don't ever hear anything about anybody else. Sort of like, like this class, the big hitters, Brian, Andy, and then the stinks.
And then the rest of
Yeah,
y'all.
the rest of it.
Yeah. The peanut
And
gallery.
Brian's jokes.
Yeah, of course.
That's not. Kathy, is there any literature or thoughts on? We're told that his face changes, but what? To
Yeah.
What is that? What is that involve?
And this is the only gospel that says his face changes. The other one of the other ones says that his face lit up, or not the exact words, but basically makes you think that it just, like the rest of his body, became dazzling. That's a good thought. What do you think? What do you think his face changed to?
Well, I think, are we taking it too literally?
Okay.
Just his expression changed, or like, it doesn't have to be that his face totally changed to another person's face, but maybe the expression changed or something along those lines.
Yeah, that could be.
So, question. It's really early in the morning, so I'm going to sit and listen.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Jumps out to me, what is the significance of that? Why?
Okay.
I don't understand why that's necessarily in there first. Secondly, I can see where the 3 didn't want to go back down and tell everyone. One of them would be like bragging, and 2, maybe they would not necessarily believe what they said.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And sometimes when things happen to us, it's hard to tell other people because we don't want to assume what they interpret it happen.
Right. Or it sounds so crazy that we just don't want to tell people. Yeah. And I think the dazzling white, I mean, perhaps that was the way to show who he really was. I mean, I don't know that there's any good reason for that. It certainly set him apart, didn't it? But then what do we have? We have God coming in the cloud saying, what? This is my son, my chosen, listen to him. Where else do we hear God do that? Where's the only other place we hear God do that? His baptism. Yeah. Yeah. Listen to him. And it is, again, that cloud like when they were in the wilderness and the cloud of God would lead them by day, right? Or by night. Yeah. Kind of a fascinating scripture, kind of an unusual one, right? To know that his face changed and then his clothes get dazzling. And then these 2 guys who no one's ever seen, that Elijah and Moses here. But it sets him apart. It does help to solidify who he is. Yeah.
Thing that I had thought about before, I don't see it in words, but Jesus went away by himself to pray often.
Yes.
Maybe this was not a unique occurrence.
To be.
You need Peter, John, that's good.
Okay.
But we don't. Maybe that's normal. Separate yourself and equal to with the likes of Moses
That's a good point. Never
Share
thought
that-
of that.
Share that with the guys.
Yeah, so what Pat said, I'm sorry, I forget to do that. For those of you online, what Pat Morgan said was maybe this was not unusual for Jesus. He would go away to pray quite often. And in this gospel, Jesus does a lot through prayer. I mean, a lot of things happen to him. And maybe when he goes away to pray, maybe he often communes with Elijah and Moses and who knows who else, right? Because he's alone to pray. Really good thought. Never thought of that. Maybe he communes with, I know he communes with God, but maybe this is not that big a deal for him.
Kathy, this is Andy. I'm struck by when his face glows, this is a lot. That goes back to Moses coming down from the mountain, and the Israelites are so afraid of him because his face is glowing. So this gives a parallel between Jesus and Moses.
Yes, Moses coming down from the mountain. Right, agree. You were going to say something?
Yeah, every time, so I guess happens a few times throughout the New Testament where Jesus says, don't, performs miracles, says don't tell people about it. And it always struck me as strange. It's like, wouldn't you want them to go out and share the gospel? But it usually occurs in moments when it's something that's happened in these people's lives that is inexplicable.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you were to go and try to explain it, it would diminish the value of that act.
Okay.
You wouldn't be able to put into words what it just happened.
Okay.
And so it's almost like people need to experience this moment in their own lives in order to understand it. So don't try and go explain it to others. Go out there, do my words, let me live through you, and then demonstrate that so that they can see
Okay.
what I can bring to this world.
Yeah. So Mark Freund said, for those online, and help me if I paraphrase this incorrectly, but that perhaps all these cases where Jesus tells his disciples, don't go out and tell anyone what happened here or what I said, maybe it's because they need to experience it themselves, because the other people do, because it's an experiential thing. It's not somebody else's interpretation of what has happened. Is that kind of what you said? What did I miss? That was close? Okay. So good thought. Yeah.
And to add on to that, God speaks to us all uniquely.
Absolutely. God speaks to us all uniquely. Yes. Very good. Yeah, good points. And I do want to point out again that in this gospel, prayer is pointed out very often, that Jesus prays. Jesus prays. Jesus goes off to pray. So that's one of the questions I have for you guys today. If you can flip to the questions there, Andy, if you don't mind. It's about prayer. And note that in Luke, many things happened while Jesus was in prayer. So I would ask you, and you don't have to answer this here, are you happy with your prayer life? And if you're not, most people are not, honestly. Some people are. But if you're not, think about what you can do to make that stronger. And I'm going to make a shameless plug here for Lenten prayer triads. We're getting ready to form those again for Lent. And I think a few people in here did it last year. Brandon, I know you did. And you did? Yeah. So they are great, y'all. You get to pray with 2 other people. And sometimes that can lead to a lifelong friendship. It could lead to somebody who becomes an accountability partner for you. It could lead to a much stronger prayer time. So really highly recommend it. Anybody else here have anything that came out of their prayer triads last time that they want to mention? All right, do it then. Y'all do it. Yeah. All right, so some of these are the questions we already talked about. How do you think the disciples recognized Moses and Elijah if they'd never seen them before? Why do you think Luke said that Peter didn't know what he was saying when he suggested those shelters? And why do you think the disciples told no one what they'd seen that day? That we pretty much answered all those. Those were the ones I wanted y'all to talk about around the tables. But let's talk, what questions are there? We have plenty of time. What questions do we have here that I can try to answer, or I can punt to Phil because he He's the doctor in the crowd.
I think you asked about what the others thought. I mean, there's probably a mix. Some were relieved to have a little breather, and others probably were kind of, why not me? Or, why did those guys get to go?
The disciples that were left behind. Okay. Maybe they, for people online, maybe they were happy to have those other guys away, gave them a break. Or maybe they also wondered why maybe it was a little bit of resentment. Yeah.
The disciples that went were the earliest followers of Jesus. Those three that went, were they the earliest followers?
James and John, were they the first ones called?
I don't know. I was just wondering if maybe that's.
Kathy, we have a question online also when you get a chance.
I'm sorry.
There's a question online in the
chat. The question was, were those disciples that went with Jesus the earliest disciples of his? I don't know that, I mean, we could look back at Luke.
He calls Peter from his fishing, and then James and John drop their nets and follow.
Are they the very first ones though? Yeah. So it may be more what Fran was saying. Maybe, I mean, who knows? None of us know the answer to this, but it may be that those were his trusted ones. It may be that those were the ones that he felt like really needed to see this. Maybe they needed to be, they were the ones that were kind of questioning things and, all right, let's take them up there and let's show them who I really am. Question online. But the verse says, in the cloud, then there's the voice of God, and Jesus was found alone. Was this any way indicative of his ascension into heaven? That's a really good question. Is it a foreshadowing, perhaps, of his ascension into heaven? Could be. Yeah. Almost like that one art depiction we saw.
Was it Elisha, S-H-A, was he the one that never died, just went straight up?
Was taken up in heaven. I think it was Elijah, wasn't it? We'll look it up. It may be Shah. Shah and Shah. Shah was watching.
He dropped what mantle? He drops his mantle.
And then went shot.
Taken straight up. Yep. Hard to keep the Jahs and the Shahs. Art. What else? Questions, thoughts? Yeah, Brandon.
Why did Jesus refer to John, or why does the gospel refer to John as the disciple that Jesus loved?
What'd somebody say?
I was just saying that John heard that a lot.
Because John wrote the book.
The question was, why does it refer to John as the disciple that Jesus loved? Because he got it?
He understood God's love, Jesus' love for him.
Okay. Okay. One of the answers is that John got it. That he
trusted his mother to John.
And he entrusted his mother to John, Fran says. What else? Any other thoughts on that one? Phil, you got a thought?
Well, it's also in a book written by the Johannian community.
Right.
So our guide is obviously
the beloved.
Loved, but I think there's more to it than that.
Right. That has something to do with it, most likely.
You can say that about all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
So
why did they confess it?
Right.
Yeah. That's why I say
he got it.
Yeah. Yeah. What else? Other thoughts?
Well, clearly, the other gospels have different interpretations of this.
Yeah.
I wonder why Luke is so much more descriptive.
Added some of these other details that the others didn't.
Was he the most educated? I mean, he was. If he was a doctor, say possibly, he may possibly been Greek. I don't know how many of you guys got to hear Luke Johnson this week. Sunday morning, he was in Sunday school class. We'll be here again this week. But he talks about, he combines Luke and Acts.
The two
books
written by the same
Luke
person.
Acts.
Yeah.
Is that right, Phil? Am I saying that correctly?
Yep, Luke Acts.
Because one is, the story of Jesus, and then Christian life. And the guy's like 76 years old, I believe. And, but he's really, he's truly a biblical scholar.
He's a Luke Acts are his thing.
And he's not the only one that talks about that. He's the only one that does that. Okay, versus just the narrative of Jesus. That's why Acts isn't part of the gospel, even though Luke supposedly wrote it. Because it's just the form, because it's more the Christian life under Acts. But Luke is by far, he fills in the details much more so than anybody else.
Is that because
And I think what he said, is it a third of the New Testament, those two books, Phil? Yeah, something like that? Yeah. Those two books in total are a third of the New Testament.
52 chapters between the two.
Was Luke written? It was Matthew, Mark, Matthew,
In order of, I think that's right. And the two other synoptics take from the first one, right?
Yeah, so it would make sense if you knew the source material from it earlier, that you would write the exact same stuff that you would put in newer things that you discovered.
Perhaps, yeah.
Along the way.
And use that other, I don't know if y'all have heard of Q, not that Q, but yeah.
It isn't part of it probably also Luke's audience who he's specifically writing to, so it has to be a little bit more detailed and descriptive.
Perhaps, yeah. So let's see.
He appealed to the Gentiles too.
Right.
That was the difference. The other Bible books were written primarily for the Jews. Luke was the one that took it outside Judaism into the Gentiles.
Yeah, it says Luke's narrative may be based more on the situation of the Christian community toward the end of the first century than on a presentation of historical events during the time of Jesus.
Luke obviously wasn't there. Who's the, I guess, I can't remember. Was Luke written for some, in other words, was somebody dictating to Luke if he wrote, or was this a book that Luke wrote on his own? I can't remember.
Good question. I don't think we know the answer to that. Yeah. It's like all of these. Who really wrote them? We can date them back to an approximate time, right? But do we really know who actually wrote them? All right, with that, just kill the crowd. Yeah, go.
No, I say, was the presence of Moses and Elijah also possibly, to show the Jews, the Gentiles, everybody that, they were, just tying them together with Jesus and the, I guess conversion is the word that comes to mind, but the non-believers and believers that here are their keepers of the law were so significant, but as significant in Jesus's presence and his ministry.
All right, I'm not sure I caught what the question was. Okay. Say it.
The people who are doubting Jesus, who were against his message.
Yeah.
You had all the Pharisees and the teachers of the law,
right,
that leaned on Moses and Elijah to show the significance that Jesus's story and message, was part of it.
They're not getting that story.
Yeah, they're not there.
And nobody's talking about it.
Yeah. But I like the way you're going.
But for us, just going
for us, yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah. And so the question was, is Moses perhaps there as the keeper of the law? Then Jesus come along as what? How did you phrase that?
Comes, as to show that Jewish tradition, Jewish law is no longer. It's important, but for all the new believers, the Jesus movement and followers, that it's still a significant part of that.
Right.
Those thought he was kind of anti or against.
Okay. That Jesus comes along as fulfillment, perhaps, and as those laws are important, yes, but Jesus comes along and gives
So
us.
it's reminding, the people in that day, he's walking around, well, didn't the people before you, your fathers, when they laid this out, what I'm professing is kind of anchored or tied in that.
Right, right. I'm a Jew, right? And I've studied all this, right? Yeah.
Hey, Kathy,
Yes.
let's take it further, that Jesus knows what's gonna happen in the future. Jesus knows what happens there. They don't go tell anybody. He knows eventually we are all gonna hear about this.
He knows it's going to be told anyway.
It's gonna be told anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So when it is told, it becomes that much more relevant to future generations.
Interesting thought.
Because
Yeah.
of the fact that Moses, along with Elijah the prophet, were there. Hey, this is the real deal.
Yeah. So the comment in the room was Jesus knew what was going to happen, and perhaps he knew that this story would be told, and then this appearance of Moses and Elijah with him, we would be talking about centuries later, right? And trying to make a connection between who Moses was and who Elijah was and who Jesus is. Yeah. Good point.
Well, to Michael's point, this would have been great PR. I mean, we're all the people that weren't believers, that eventually the people that scourged him and crucified him, if they had known about this first event, the second event, they never have taken place. Because there is Jesus with Moses and Elijah. He must be the guy. So for me, to Michael's point, it's a big impetus for non-believers to get on the bandwagon.
Okay.
So there may not have even been a crucifixion. He might have been hailed as the Messiah from the get-go. But for whatever reason, they decided, don't say anything about this.
Yeah.
Strange.
The comment in the room is that it was great PR for Jesus, right? And perhaps if the word had gotten out, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That perhaps the crucifixion may not have happened if other people were knew who Jesus really was. What about those scribes and I'm not trying to argue, but I just think about the scribes and the Pharisees who were jealous and who do not want this man around because he's shaking this stuff up.
So maybe sometimes timing is really important.
Say that a little bit louder.
Sometimes timing is, so it's better to hold for just sort of the comment you just made.
Yeah.
It's better for this to be later.
Okay.
Yeah, that's messy.
Because reception will be better later.
Okay. Comment is maybe timing is everything, and maybe the holding on to this story until afterwards is more impactful for people at a later time. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody yet. Yeah. Patience and patient endurance. Is that the fruit that we're looking for in life? Question. Was the vision added to the story to give Jesus more credibility? The vision of the three or the two together? Jack, is that what you mean? Vision added to the story to give Jesus more credibility. Probably. When you say added to the story, I'm not sure what you mean. It's in the other two gospels that these two men appear, Elijah and Moses. And perhaps that is the reason why they're there. I mean, I think that's what we said earlier, right? Is that they show up with Jesus and Jesus turns dazzling white, or his face changes, or his face gets bright. And this is a way of showing those disciples that came with him, he's in line, he's with these guys. He's as important. And as you've said he's the Messiah. And yeah, now I'm going to show you that he is as important as Elijah and Moses.
In the case of the parable we talked about last week, the sower,
Yeah.
He says to the disciples, you are in the know. I'm going to tell you everything.
Right.
Okay, because you guys are special. But we're not doing this with the rest of the world. And so forth. So he was talking in parables and so on and so on. So here, it seems logical that he's saying, this group needs to really know. I'm revealing everything to these guys.
Yeah.
But that's not something for, necessarily wide distribution. So yes, we need to know that.
Right.
This is a wonderful thing for us to have.
Right.
And if I'm right, and he was doing this all the time, anyway, if we don't know about it, well, that's unfortunate. But if it was only once, and the three of them were there,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was, we talk about, I think he was dealing with them differently, of course, than he was public. He could have dragged some Pharisees up there and said, look, here's the deal.
Yep.
I want you to see this.
Yep.
Put an end to this now.
Right.
He could have done all of those things. He could have demonstrated with no reservation on anybody's part that he was God. He could have done that.
Right.
So this is in keeping, I think, with that whole.
Right. So the comment in the room is that Jesus talked in parables to the crowds, but he explained them, like the parable of the sower from last week, he explained them to his disciples, right? And so here he's revealing to his disciples who he really is. He could have taken the Pharisees up with him and put an end to it, is the comment, but he doesn't. So yeah, good thoughts there. Another question up here. During the time of the transformation, did Jews believe that God only made his presence known in the temple? During the time of the transformation, transfiguration? Okay. Did the Jews believe that God only made his presence known in the temple like they had before? I believe that's true. Yeah, they still believe that. What's that?
You saw God, you died.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, still got the Holy of Holies, right? And the one priest that gets to go back in there. There was something I was going to say. Now I lost my train of thought.
Can you imagine being one of the disciples? Could you understand, comprehend what you saw? Is that why they
Could you do it credence when you got, could you really explain what you saw? Yeah. Yeah. Could you even do justice to what you'd seen?
It'd be credible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like what you said. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, the comment being that they didn't go down and tell other people because they couldn't have explained it in a way that was really appropriate or lived up to what actually really happened up there. The other thing, I know what I was going to say. The other comment or the question I have is, why do you think they didn't take the Pharisees or any of those other guys up there? Why didn't they? Why didn't they?
What Nathan was just saying, that I think we all have a conversion moment in our lives, and it had to be at the right time. And you've seen these disciples continually ask Jesus questions like, as though he is not the Messiah. I mean, they're like, oh, how do you get? Just then to drill it into him.
Right.
And Jesus may have recognized this was their conversion moment for those two.
Okay.
But then the others just weren't ready yet. And
okay.
They're like, look, give them time. This is your moment. Like, go pray on it. Whatever happened in that moment. So I know my own, like, there's plenty of times in my life that the same message could make us repeat and the same thing's gonna happen, but I would be like, yeah, whatever.
Right.
It's it's coincidence or whatever. And it just has to be the right time.
Okay. The comment being that everybody has their own conversion moment or their own experience of God. And perhaps it wasn't the right time maybe it was the right time for these three to be there. Am I getting what you're saying? Kind of getting what you're saying? It was the right time for these three to be there, but perhaps it wasn't for anybody else. Yeah, That's a good point. What was, I hate to say what was God's plan though, but what did Jesus said was going to happen? And if he were to bring the Pharisees up there and convince them who he was, would any of that have happened? You said there would not have had to have been a crucifixion. Where would we be if there wasn't a crucifixion and then a resurrection? What would we have at this point?
Remember why Jesus came. Okay?
Why did Jesus come?
Jesus came because the rest of us are sinners, take on our sins so that we could have a resurrection. So it's all part of the plan.
Okay.
Part of the end game, if you will. We couldn't get to the fourth quarter if that happened. Okay?
Yes.
So, I mean, that's why the Pharisees and the scribes weren't there. Because that was, like John said, would have rewritten the story.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
The purpose of Jesus being on earth.
Yeah. Yeah. So the comment in the room is that if the Pharisees and all had gone up there and changed their mind, we would have a totally different story. Jesus came to save us because we're all sinful and to show us that God forgives us, right? And he took on all those sins, was crucified, and then rose as a way of showing that death is defeated, right? And if this had happened where the Pharisees had gone up there and had been convinced, oh, well, he must be who he says he is, he wouldn't have fulfilled what his plan was or what God's plan was. Uh-oh, does that mean it's time to go? That's my 2-minute warning. All right. Do we end with prayer and prayer concerns? Is that the way we end this? Fran closes us. Can we ask for prayer concerns? Because I'd like to know them. Anybody have prayer concerns? Brandon, how's your mom? Yes.
I want to thank you all for the prayers for my mom. Something I see you at Northside on a ventilator with COVID. She was declared non-responsive to comatose last week. No gag reflex, no pupil reflex. Had the call where we had all the doctors come in and decide about life support moving forward. And literally right in the room after the doctors left, the chaplain was there, and I just pray over her, and she was with her arm up out of the bed under the cover, and joined me with the chaplain. So
wow.
I appreciate it.
So tell us how she currently is today.
So she's responding now. Site, she's tracking, responding.
Are you kidding me? That's amazing. Okay. Wow. 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 That's amazing. That's a great. Anybody else? All right. All yours, my friend. Oh, let me take this off before I walk away. I'm talking to it? No. Wait a minute. I got to unhook myself. I don't know where I've gotten it. Oh, it's over here.